Well, she was a whistleblower for investigations into dodgy Gauteng PPE tenders. But on Monday morning, just minutes after dropping her daughter off at school, Babita Deokaran was shot several times inside her car at her Johannesburg home. She later died in hospital in what's believed to have been a hit, and the Special Investigating Unit has since confirmed the senior finance official in the Gauteng Health Department was a witness in their investigations. The SIU says there were no signs her life was in danger and that her murder doesn't affect their work. Well, criminal lawyer William Booth joins us now to give us his opinion on that. William, how are you? Firstly, good morning.
Morning, Annika. I'm absolutely fine. How are you?
Great. Thanks, William. Such sad news here, and one wonders if the death of Babita Deokaran is going to have a negative impact on the SIU's case into PPE corruption.
Yes, certainly it's tragic, and I believe it should really have been avoided because there's special legislation in place dealing with witness protection. It's legislation that was promulgated as way back as 1998. There's also a unit at the National Prosecuting Authorities that deals specifically with witness protection issues. So she was, I believe, an important witness in this matter, and obviously it's going to have an effect on the case. There's certainly other witnesses, but she held a very senior position. So my view is that, yes, she certainly is important, and yes, I think there's going to be an impact with regard to the prosecution in this case as far as her evidence, which obviously cannot be presented as she's now deceased, tragically so.
William, you spoke about legislation that is in order to protect whistleblowers, but it doesn't seem to be implemented, because if you read Mandy Wiener's book on whistleblowers and speak to some of the people who worked throughout the Eskom state capture incidents of corruption, those whistleblowers have had a life of hell ever since they decided to speak out.
Absolutely. So it's all very well having legislation in place and having a unit at the National Prosecuting Authorities that deals with these kind of issues, whistleblowers, or just in general with witnesses who may come forward to testify about any kind of case. They need to be protected. In many instances, the case rests on the evidence of such witnesses. So, you know, they need to be approached, they need to be told what they can be offered with regard to protection, because we've seen this happening constantly, that witnesses in key cases, and this is not only about corruption, it's cases in general, where witnesses have been targeted and have been killed, and those affect, their deaths obviously affect the ability of the prosecutors to deal with a particular case. So it's the practical implementation that is a serious, serious problem. And I don't think we can keep blaming COVID to say, well, there are many police officers who are not at their desks and doing their duty because they're booked off, or people at the NPA. You know, you have to look at a practical solution to this. And if the administration of these laws and the implementation are not running effectively and are causing huge problems with regard to the prosecution of cases, I think everybody needs to take a step back and say, well, how do we sort out this problem? Because it is not being sorted out from an administrative and from a practical perspective, because this should just not have been allowed. And it's not the first time.
William, in terms of witness protection, it's quite a disruptive process, isn't it? I mean, it changes your entire life, at least until the duration or the finalization of a trial.
Yes, absolutely. But you don't necessarily just have to take a witness out of their home and away from their family, which obviously can happen. You can place them in a safe house. And listen, witness protection is not just in South Africa, it happens in the UK, United States of America, all over the world. So one can look at what is happening in other countries and how better to implement the whole situation. You can have a situation where somebody is at home but has the necessary security. at the house, when they travel, wherever they go, that there's security around. And at least that will prevent, to a large extent, witnesses being targeted. And obviously, even if there is protection and even if there are security guards around, something might happen. I mean, that is so. But I think, if you're not taking somebody out of their house, away from their family, please provide proper security at their homes. If they then go from their homes, let's say shopping or whatever, and avoid as much movement as possible with regard to that potential witness. And it's not just only up to the time a trial takes place, because these trials could take a few years before they are dealt with in the various courts. It could be afterwards. So somebody comes into court, testifies, and after he or she has testified, that person can also be targeted. So, you've got to look at post testifying and making sure that that person is protected. I mean, it is quite inroad into a person's life, because for the rest of their lives, they may possibly be targeted, but they've got to carry on with their lives. But if they've been as bold as to come forward and have been prepared to, particularly in this instance, to stop corruption, then surely the state must put out its hand and say, we will do everything humanly possible to ensure your safety. And I don't believe that is happening. Everything is in place for it to happen, but for practical implementation, it doesn't seem to be. So I'd certainly like to hear from the SIU unit, the police, the Hawks, and obviously the NPA as to, what exactly is in place. And I think they need to send out a message to prospective witnesses saying, this happened, but in future, it's not going to happen. We've put the following measures in place to ensure the safety of all witnesses. Otherwise, none of these cases are going to go to trial. You might as well not even bother with all the work that the Commission has done with regard to corruption, all the other commissions that have taken place, and all the effort that the NPA investigators, other experts are doing to try and ensure the prosecution. If their witnesses are not going to be protected, then you might as well just stop everything now. So they've got to tell the public what are they putting in place.
Thank you so much. A very difficult situation there. I don't know. It's so difficult. It's so hard. And that was a criminal law expert. Thank you so much, William Booth, for speaking to us from Cape Town. Tabs, I mean, when I've spoken to people who've seen corruption going on especially at municipal level or at Eskom, you can say, why didn't you speak out? But they've got school fees to pay. They've got households to run. They're going to get fired, most likely. And their lives, they probably won't be protected. Yeah. Of course, you were brought up to do the right thing, but the stakes are really high.
And like William Booth was saying there's so many instances where we need these witnesses to come forward to cooperate with prosecutors, etc. And when something like this happens, it obviously deters them. So if the processes and the machinery is there, then it must be used.
Must be implemented, exactly. Well.